I hope you can see the slides that we are sharing. So today we are going to talk about the different roles in industry and startups. And we have here, yes, this is Dania, and I have with me Chris and our special guest, Teresa. I see some people are already posting some questions in the chat. So please, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can just type your question and we will pick it up. I see that there's a question here if there's a dial-in number for the meeting. So this is a webinar. It's not a meeting. I don't know if for webinars we have also dial-in numbers. I can quickly check. Chris, would you like to say some words before we get started while I look up for this dial-in number? Okay, I don't hear you, Chris. I see that you're moving your mouth, but I don't hear. Yes.
Super.
Yes.
Okay, so we try again. Good evening, everybody. Hello and welcome. This is Chris speaking. So we're tuned into the datacareer event series, the one that's specifically about data roles. We run this every now and then to be able to talk about the changing landscape, the way roles are changing in industry and startups. Something that we specifically do is look at the differences between data engineering, data science, and data analytics and the roles in that, and how they're evolving, how they go together, how they're different, how they're perhaps different in different companies. We typically have a special guest. So today is Teresa that has ample experience in these fields, not just one, but more than one. And we're here to talk about them, but we are much more here actually to kind of answer your questions. So that's also why actually you see the three of us. So we have varying roles and there will be different times at which we speak. And when we're not speaking, we have actually time to go on mute if you so like and start answering your questions also in the chat. So some of you have already used the quick chat question. So you can open that and actually at any time, and we'll keep reminding you that please type in your questions. These questions will then get picked up by Dania, Teresa, or myself, or we will simply start typing in the answers as we go through. Okay, I can see that we're up to 67 at the moment. The numbers are still going up slowly, but perhaps we start?
Yes, sounds good to me. Okay, then let me go to the slides. Yes.
Super. So this is where I have a bit of an intro. So you're looking at a quote here, actually. So it's not us. It's somebody called Jean-François Garnier, French-Canadian entrepreneur, the co-founder of Element AI. Actually, Element AI late last year, no, early this year got sold. So it was once upon a time the best funded AI startup ever. With a gigantic Series A of $100 million. And Jean-François Garnier was one of the co-founders of it. The other one was Joshua Benjo and a few more. And he is also known, or particularly known to me, for the fact that over the past years, he's really been doing work on the talent space. So I recommend that you actually take the name, throw it into Google, find his personal website, and look at the reports that he's written in 2018, 2019, and 2020 about the changing landscape for data careers. He initially focused very much on the talents, but he's now kind of developed a more elaborate way of looking at this. And from this is the quote that you see. So no matter who you are, self-improvement is one of the most important and most overlooked attributes of young AI talent. It only takes 4 years of experience to become a senior AI researcher or 5 years of experience to lead an entire institute. And then he says the determination and discipline to improve both the hard and soft skills continually will be the deciding factor. Now, what's the context of this? The context of this is that the field is new. The field is growing rapidly. And because it's new and it's growing rapidly, it creates these opportunities. One of these opportunities is that you can accelerate your own career and be a senior in 4 or perhaps even a lead in 5. That's what he's talking here about. And it's the wider context, yeah, that enables this. And it's at this point in time in this industry. And then he qualifies this and says that what you need to do is you need to improve both the hard and the soft skills. So there are 2 sides of this. One is the technical, one is the more business organization, communication stuff. And that because the field is so wide open and so young, a lot of it is in your own hands. That's, so to speak, the encouraging message that comes from this. And then my recommendation to go and find out more if you like. Next one. So what you're looking at today is an event of the AI Guild. So you see here our motto, the go-to community for data and business professionals advancing AI adoption. You can find out more online if you like. This is what this slide shows you. What I can say is that we are at the moment 700 plus members. And let me put it like this. So we are a practitioner community, not necessarily an enthusiasts community. So we are and work with and work for and represent and help and support the people in the career. That's what we are, from entry level through mid-level to senior to lead. And the AI Guild has also a few members that are actually at CXO level, so CTO, CDO, all the way from entry level to the C level and all practitioners.
Yes.
I go first today. So so actually my life in this field comes in 2 phases. Some 10 years ago, I was working for the Max Planck Society, so this academic research organization in Germany, when they had to roll out the IT infrastructure. So this was the moment when all the 80 Max Planck institutes and 10,000 researchers were connected to a single pipeline, if you so like. And part of that effort of doing that was kind of looking at the behavior of researchers as authors and readers and trying to understand better. And we were then in a position where we were able to run log file analysis projects coupled with survey projects. So on the one hand, what people do online and how they think about it or what they say about it. And I was able to run this in a European ecosystem with other large research organizations like CERN and all the academic publishers. And it was, so to speak, part of an effort of rolling it out and making it work for the user. And this was 10 years ago. I then left the field, actually, to be honest, because in 2012 in Berlin, data, and then came back later, some 5 years later, as a bootcamp director in Berlin, so directing one of the bootcamps that people go to transition into a data career. And something that I picked up there is that, you know, the technical skills are one part, but the other and sometimes much more interesting part is the things that come with it and the mission that you have and why you want to do it and whether you can find a job, whether you can find a good second job, and so on and so on. This is why it says here data career coaching since 2017.
Thank you, Chris. Now it's my turn to introduce myself briefly. So I am one of the founding members of the AI Guild organizing this event for you. I'm a data scientist and I focus on machine learning models for predictive analytics. Before, I was also teaching at a bootcamp, and I am in the data career since 2012. So I started as a marketing analyst, and then I changed it to data scientist. And And we have our special guest for today, Tereza. Would you like to say some words?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello everybody. Yeah, I'm Tereza Iofciu, and I started like with data, I think in officially like 2005, and then was, I guess, the right place at the right time. So yeah, so basically I worked as almost everything. So I did data science, data engineering, product management, researcher, and I have a PhD in information retrieval, which is also quite popular at the moment, part of NLP. And now I'm actually teaching at a bootcamp. So that is my current role now. So different bootcamps, but yeah.
Yes, right. You will hear more about Tereza later in the webinar. And let me give you the outline of what we have planned for today. So first, we are going to say some words about the AI Guild and the effort that we are doing to advance data careers. Then we move on to the core part of the webinar, or what is on the title, the difference between being an analyst, a scientist, or an engineer, and what are the skills for each of those specialized roles. And in that, you will hear from Tereza's experience and the difference between different positions that she already mentioned she worked in. And finally, we will wrap up with some orientation. And as we said from the beginning, please just write your questions in the chat and we'll pick it up either answering on the chat or answering here verbally. So let's start. Chris, would you like to say something about the effort of advancing data careers?
Indeed. So it's an event by the AI Guild, and the AI Guild has been going on since 2019. Actually, we sort of had a founding meeting in the May of 2019, so it's not quite 2 years. But one of the things that we did really immediately is working with our members, working with ourselves on data careers. Tereza can perhaps also say something about this from her bootcamp experience. So one of the things that we see as practitioners is that the labor market, and particularly for early roles, is not always so straightforward. It can be a bit confusing, and you can see some of the learnings that we've had over time. So we learned that the search for the first as well as the second role may sometimes take quite long. Actually, I just had a conversation about this today with somebody who's been searching for quite a while. So it may take up to 6 or more months. And therefore, for example, also if you're thinking of a career transition into a data role, you need to start early enough. It may simply take time. And then we have a pandemic at the moment. So that's probably even more true so right now. Now, another observation that we saw is that upgrading inside a company may be easier. So think of it like this. There was also already this question about data science and data engineering, and perhaps this is a way actually of answering it. Something that I have observed repeatedly is that people started out in a data analyst role after university, after a boot camp, after coming from data warehousing or business intelligence or something. They started out as data analyst. The company got a bigger data team. They started looking at use cases for machine learning. And then the move, so to speak, from data analytics into data science was quite natural. This is where this observation comes from. Upgrading inside a company may actually be easier. Another thing I already alluded to is that on the labor market with the job advertisements, they can be misleading or confusing. So sometimes you're looking at job advertisements and they have like the unicorn list. So you're supposed to do everything and anything. That can be confusing. Sometimes, of course, it says something, and if you then look at the job description, you're wondering, is it data scientist? Is it data analyst? What exactly do they want? Of course, the profession isn't, it isn't that well defined yet. And another comment I just saw today, data scientist can mean a lot of things. So one has to look, and one has to look at the job description. And then the next one is, so I look at this long list of requirement. Oh, I only meet 60%, or I meet 80%, or should I apply? Should I not? Is this for me or not? So that can also be an issue. And we're willing to take questions on that. And then the final one is also something we reserve, that the role in real life may not match the talent's expectations, meaning that on occasion, not too infrequently, people have started in companies and have found out that what then happens over the next 3 to 12 months wasn't quite what they expected before starting there. And that can also create problems, which is also why we're doing this event, to talk more about what roles are, and also to take your questions and kind of develop strategies for helping you with this and making sure that your experience, if possible, is better. Because of course, if you're in this career or you start this career, you really want your first job to work out well. You want to find a good team. You want to have some impact. You want to be on a steep learning curve. So I think we understand what you're after. And we see that there can be some issues, and that's why we're here tonight. And then in doing that, we of course also started observing the market, looking at reports, looking at some data, looking at experience and so on. And some of the things that we saw is the specialization, differentiation of roles. So this is also really about tonight when we say analytics, science, engineering, machine learning. They're even more in that NLP, computer vision. At the moment, what we can really see is the specialization's always been there, but it's picking up pace. It's becoming more important. Roles are becoming more clearly defined. You can now start your career as a computer vision engineer from day one. Then the rising value of domain expertise. This basically means that for a while, you could be a computational biologist and move into autonomous driving. And the connection was image processing. And maybe that's still possible, actually. But as things get more settled and we move forward, I actually expect that people will not be switching domains that much, so that the accumulation of expertise matters. Yeah, so if you're doing things with image processing in the mobility sector and you develop expertise, it becomes more likely that your second and third job will be in the same domain. Third observation, and supported by the other two, we think that the experimental phase with the predominance of proof of concepts is actually ending, that companies that invest or really substantially put money down in this field will now want to see business value. They will want to see a return on this investment that they can quantify, and just doing proof of concept doesn't deliver that. So it'll have to go beyond that. And in line with that, what we're also seeing is an increasing focus on deployment. So the stuff that is done actually needs to work. It needs to be inside a product. The product can, of course, be for an internal or external customer. That depends, but that's what we see. One more. So one of the things, or what at the AI Guild we do is we run things, but we also create opportunities for members. So if you are interested in the AI Guild and you want to find out more, you can obviously find us online, and you can also apply to be a member if you're interested. And then there are some opportunities that come with this that you're just looking at. Thank you. So one revolves around the events. Like tonight, you can be a special guest on one of the shows, like Tereza is at the moment, and a number of other people have been as well. You can host events in the field if you have something to say, or you want to help, or you know how to organize. The AI Guild is also running a career development program, basically for people in year 2, 3, 4 of their career. And coming next month is the accredited expert. So we're creating kind of like something that by which you can recognize experts as the real deal, as accredited experts, which is we're putting together in the background at the moment, and will go live next month with the first bunch of accredited experts.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And also, let me just go back a bit. Yes, so all of those events, you are welcome to join us via Eventbrite. So I know maybe some of you found this event already via our Eventbrite page, the AI Guild. And yeah, you can also find others there and join us. So I move forward to the part when I talk about the different specialized roles that we have. So I start with this image here. It's an adaptation from something that was published in 2015 already in this paper by the Google researchers called Hidden Technical Debt in Machine Learning Systems. So there, what we have is this, all of the pieces that are part of productionizing machine learning. So we can see here there are many different pieces, and to configure an end-to-end solution, you have to work on all of them. This is why we see that there's this trend to become specialized. And what I am attempting to do here is a color matching system. So we have a list of different roles, for example, data engineer, and then the tasks that would be the responsibility of the data engineer are the tasks that are here in blue. So data collection, data quality, and data pre-processing. You have the data analyst in yellow, and those would be the analysis, business logic, and A/B testing pieces. As for the data scientist, I have here feature extraction, parameter configuration, and offline validation. As for the machine learning engineer, in gray, we have the process management tools, monitoring, machine resource management, configuration, and the infrastructure that is covering the overall process. And lastly, there is the AI researcher here represented in green, which is taking care about the machine learning models. So the idea here is that the AI researcher would be the one developing new machine learning models, as where the data scientists would use those models to fit the data for this company or this solution that is being developed. And we can see here, this is what my disclaimer is that this is the idea in a more defined way, but in reality, we know that the lines here are blurry and there is some bit of overlap, and even sometimes there's a mix between one and the other. But this is what I would say is the more clear definition, even though in reality it's not always like this, black and white. And then for each of those 5 roles that I'm proposing here, we have some specific tasks and skills. Again, it's not that each of them would only be responsible for those tasks, but I'm considering them the core tasks. So if we start with the data engineer here in blue, the main task and the main responsibility is to build and maintain infrastructure and the data pipeline. And for the data analyst, it's to take that data and together with business understanding, be able to report on what happens. For the data scientist, the main task is to understand the business case and to build the features to train the predictive models addressing those use cases. The machine learning engineer here has the task to optimize and deploy those machine learning models in production. And as I mentioned before, the AI researcher is taking care of creating new machine learning algorithms and finding custom scientific solutions. For each of those different tasks, we have different skills. And for that, there is, again, an overlap of skills that we're going to explore in the next part of the presentation. I think that the main message that I want to leave you with here is that at the end, data science is a team sport. So the full picture, like the one that I showed in the first slide here of the section, is about deploying a solution. And we see that there are many different pieces that comprise that. And that requires a variety of skills that is uncommon to find in one single person that is that unicorn. Which means that in practice, what we have is a team that complements each other, and then we can have all the skill sets for successful execution. At the beginning, I mentioned the 5 data roles, but we also, in such a team, we would also find other roles like a product owner, DevOps, and maybe even more other like architects and so on, depending on the type of solution. The entire idea here is that if each one of the team members understands this full picture of the end-to-end machine learning, then it's easier to work together, to organize and split the tasks, and then to consolidate everything in a more efficient manner. I don't know if we have any questions about this at the time. I'm not following the chat. But that was about it. So I will go on to the next part, which is about the different skills. Yes, and this is where I hand to Tereza.
Yeah, so I guess I would start with a little bit like how I got into data science, and I would have to say it is kind of the old school path to data science. I basically studied computer science. I would say the new school path to get into data science is studying anything but computer science. And so basically, yeah, I studied computer science in Bucharest. We had this, yeah, blackboards, you know, programming on blackboards. 286 computers, like if you don't remember that, you're not old enough. Anyways, and then I basically got to Hanover to do my Diplomarbeit, and I continued to do my PhD. Somewhere during my PhD in 2008, the data science term was coined by one guy working at LinkedIn, another one at Facebook. So and then I applied for a job at Xing. It was in 2011, not many things going on in Germany on the spectrum. The job that I applied for was senior Perl developer because during my PhD, I did an internship at Microsoft where I had the choice between working in Perl and C#. And I thought, I do Linux, C# is not going to be something that I can easily install there. You know, back then you couldn't really install Windows stuff on Linux or vice versa. So I decided to do everything in Perl, and I thought, yeah, of course I can apply for a senior Perl developer after 3 months of coding in Perl. Who can't, right? So, and it's also the only job in Germany, like Northern Germany. So I applied, and it was indeed on the data team, which was called back then content discovery. And they were kind of all developers. And so, yeah, I stayed at Xing for like 3.5 years. And then I moved I started as, yet again, 2016 was also not a very good year to get a data science job still. BI developer at my taxi, which is called now FreeNow. I had quite a lot of constraints about the kind of job that I wanted. I was like, I don't have any desire to analyze advertisement data nor marketing data. So for me, then most of the companies were off the plate, right? So, and then there was gaming or not gaming. And thank God that I applied at Good Games, but they wanted Zeugnis for every study that I did. And I was like, what? Are you seriously? I don't have so many toys. Also with grades, they wanted everything. I was like, that must be, you gotta be kidding me. So I dropped out of the interview process because I didn't want to do the paperwork. Plus at the time, the other interview went in like 1 hour, 1 week, and then I had the job. And then I left end of 2020, actually mid of 2020, FreeNow, and I started at neuefische as head data science coach. And if you go to the next slide, then I can tell you exactly how it all went. So I didn't actually have a career growth like the whole time, right? Because you see, like, it's a lot of years in her, and I could have been now, I should be now CEO, like at my age, I could be CEO or founder of the whole world of data, right? I'm not. And like, if you follow the progression, like the quote from the beginning, in 5 years, I should have been already in 2010 done with controlling and world domination. But as this was not really my aim back then, so honestly, between 2000 and 2015, I was really going with the flow. There was absolutely no intentionality going on in anything that I did. I just basically, I guess there was a combination of opportunity, having perspective from like my family. So they were like, you know, growing up in Romania, it's like if you don't go to university, you're going to sell stuff at the supermarket. So there was this pressure from home, and obviously selling stuff at the supermarket in Romania is not seen as the career goal. And so there was perspective and affinity to math. So I ended up studying computer science, and then a professor from the university in Hanover came to the university to interview. I interviewed. He cared about diversity, so he did want to get also women in the university in Hanover, so lucky me. And then I got to Hanover, and then I also stayed, although everybody said you're not really PhD material, and I'm like, try me. So anyway, I managed to finish it, but it was 6 years, right? So, and others are like 3 years and they're done, but it was a fun time for me, the PhD. Working at Xing was a lot of transitions. I think I went through every possible type of team, every possible type of Scrum process, to stand-ups, not stand-ups, we tried everything, all the sizes. I think by the time I finished with Xing, it was like I was having a burnout, a mini burnout. I mean, I wasn't like physically burnout, I was just motivation zero. I took a year off, which when I started in 2016 at Free Now, it was completely different. I was really motivated and I really wanted to do this. I started, as I said, as a BI developer. The first thing I did was, this is not a BI developer job. This is called data engineering. We should rebrand this because we cannot hire people for BI developer if we are hiring data engineers, and nobody's going to want to have that uncool job title when it's much better like this, right? So it took 1 year to change. Like the whole company doesn't call us BI developers. It was so annoying. And so yeah, I worked there, and I think that's where I basically had the most amount of jobs in like a short amount of time. So I ended up doing product management, and because it was a question in the room from data science, like, where do you get the product managers from? We had a situation that the product management had to be done, and I was the most senior one, so I kind of fell into the goal until we managed to hire somebody who can take it over. And then eventually I became also the manager of the team. And so yeah, so I can in the next slide tell you about what is the secret. The secret is actually fits to the first goal, to the start of it. It's basically, you need to take responsibility for your career. It works for a while, that you might have opportunity and you might have a lot of luck and you might be at the right place and the right time. But in the end, if you want to get somewhere, you have to go there, right? It doesn't always come to you, right? So I heard this advice once in a meetup, and it said, write down what your dream job would be periodically. And I don't mean like the job title. I really mean like, I go to work on Monday to Friday, and these are the stuff that I do. And these are the responsibilities that I have, and these are the things that I do. And I want to do this, and I want to do that. So this exercise is not really like, of course, that dream job probably will not really happen like that, but it gives you perspective, right? It makes you reflective, like you got to do the research to see what is the delta, where you are, what you want to change, what is the space out there. It helps you to evolve in a direction and develop and learn. And if you start feeling like that's what you want to do, you're going to also initiate the process. So you will have initiative. And yeah, so basically, I think that's what I did, kind of, more or less. So try to periodically, I mean, like once a year, it's a good time. You can choose a year of the month when this is the right year, the right time for you. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, I have one more slide, I think maybe I do. Yeah. So for my example, like all the things that I did, so these are all the roles I had in the past 5 years. I've done a lot of exploration, that's for sure. Also, it doesn't mean that this role, so you saw that Dania said that data science is like a team effort. Indeed it is, but that also doesn't necessarily, you don't always have the luxury to have such a huge team. And sometimes that can also be that there are different roles that different people have to do at different times, and you might have to just do different roles in parallel, right? So if the team doesn't have an agile coach and you want to do agile because you want to get stuff done, and you want to have like a way to visualize how the stuff gets done and improve on the process, then you might have to say, look, I'm taking care of this. And if there's no product management and you see that nothing gets to production because nobody's aligning things with the rest of the company, then you gotta do it, right? And when you become manager, you're also a psychiatrist or glue to the team, and all sorts of things you can do at work, and you have to, right? And also, I think, look, in my opinion, data scientists with a little bit of dose of data engineering leads to nicer code that plays around with the rest. And that's my last slide. The rest of the company well. So yeah, that was about me.
Thank you, Tereza.
Can we perhaps pick up on Alexander's question? So yes. Tereza, for you, Alexander says she likes taking responsible for what you're heading, but what if I don't know? So we have somebody here with a PhD in chemistry who's also doing a bootcamp. So what kind of job? I mean, you're also in that role now. So what's your advice? How do I find out where to go next?
Yeah. So of course, the redefining what I meant with the research is that you basically do the research of the possible jobs that are out there. For the bootcamps, I would expect that most bootcamps you have this capstone phase, the last month of the project. And what I recommend is for people to use this space to explore, but explore in a way like, what are you motivated and excited to work on, right? Of course, if you already have a PhD in chemistry, there's maybe interesting to find a job that is at an intersection so that you can use the skills further and like build up on that, unless you're tired of chemistry and then you want to go in the completely opposite direction. Yeah. The other option is to take, I know it sounds very mean, but I mean, companies use people can also use companies, right? So just take a bad job at the beginning, whatever there, just to get an idea of what's out there. And you have the probation period, the 6 months, you can just quit, if you have the luxury, right? I mean, this is also a luxury. Just get into somewhere to kind of be, what is it called? Like, not to be stressed about not having a job. And then identify. The other thing is that I think the hardest part to do at the beginning, when you haven't worked in the industry at all, in the data science industry, is to basically be able to judge if the company's advertisement is true, right? So you have to know, yeah. So I've given a talk on this one. So basically what is really important at the beginning, you really have to kind of read between the lines and do a lot of research on the company where you want to apply. You have to know about yourself also. Like, for example, I think at the beginning, it's really nice if you work in a supportive team of data science. So you definitely don't want to end up somewhere where you're the only data scientist as your first data science job. And this is something that you can research on LinkedIn, on Xing in Germany. See what kind of people have profiles that they work in that company, in that job role that you go, oh no, they have nobody. Who is interviewing you? If the person interviewing you has nothing to do with data science, then again, they have no data scientists. And that's, yeah. So, and use the network. So I think Data Guild has a network. Use your network and say, look, what do you think? Would you apply here? And then you'll be surprised what people say. Oh no, they have bad history, don't go there. Or maybe they say they're really cool.
So indeed, I can perhaps add to that a bit from my experience. So we've had a number of questions from people that have a background in something else, actually, as recommended by Tereza, a background in something else, and are looking to transition into a data career. And I think one of the things that you need to look at is so to speak, what kind of domain do you want to be in, what kind of role do you want to be in, and what kind of industry do you want to be in. We've spoken about this, and perhaps Tereza can also say a bit more about this in a moment. So there was a question about data science, for example, and we could look at data science versus data analytics. So I would say these days, if you want a role in data science, you need some machine learning expertise. And one good benchmark for that is, if I ask you, do you know what scikit-learn is? You may say yes or no. If you say no, you kind of drop out. If I now ask you, do you have experience with scikit-learn? And you can still say yes, and perhaps even talk to what you've done with that. Then we're talking in the direction of data science, for example. But to have a data analyst role, you don't need those tools that relate to machine learning. So it's partly about thinking about what you bring, what interests you, what kind of technical skill set you have, and where you want to go. Another example I can give you is, I've worked, for example, with the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy, and then there's this wider field of astrophysics. And if you are in that field as an academic, then you are regularly, on a daily basis, dealing with terabytes of data. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to extract some signal from all the noise. And you may not think of it as data engineering, but what astrophysicists do day in, day out is actually data engineering. So that's one way of looking at it. Another example I have for you is, I was once working with somebody who was by background economist and also wanted to have a role in the data field. And then we looked at, okay, so I'm an economist. I now have some data skills, learn Python, this and that and the other. What can I do with this? And then we figured out that his background knowledge in economics would perhaps be most suitable in e-commerce. So he started developing a profile where he could bring the data and the business skills together to transition into e-commerce in the first instance, and this works. There was also somebody here who was with a background in chemistry. So I know somebody who had a PhD in physical chemistry. She actually, as a first job, went to My Taxi or Free Now in Hamburg, and now transitioned to a role with a company that is helping to decarbonize the world by working with the manufacturers of cement. Yeah? And this is where then the physical chemistry and other things that she's done in terms of data come together, and she's in her second role able to make this particularly useful. So
and she did my bootcamp, sorry.
Yes, indeed. So it's two things, right? It's, am I more on the engineering, more on the analytics side? Do I really enjoy modeling? Do I have also software engineering background, or I don't? And then, do I want to work for an e-commerce company? Is it a pharmaceutical? Where do I want to go? And I think you don't need to have all the answers, but I do think that you need to understand that this is the kind of search process going forward, that these two things are things that you need to review, and they will become clearer to you over time, hopefully.
Yes, I agree with that. I have also personally been through this search and mostly agree with what Tereza said, that once you start to think about what you want to do intentionally, maybe you don't know what you want, but at least you know what you are trying out. And by trying it out, by doing it, you will understand if this is your thing or not. Yeah. So if you have no idea, yeah, I would not be picky and I would start somewhere. But if you have some background that would contribute to the data knowledge itself, I think that's a good start already. Yeah, and I saw that there are some questions regarding what to learn, and this is the part here that I want to talk to you about the T-shaped skills for the different data roles. So T-shaped means that you have the broad knowledge, and here I put some blocks, for example, the domain expertise, the visualization and communication, programming and the tools, machine learning algorithms and statistics, and software engineering and platforms. And there's also then the deep expertise that could be in one or maybe more than one of those, maybe two. Yes. So if I start, for example, with the data analyst, what we see that the data analyst has some knowledge in machine learning algorithms and statistics, and probably some programming skills, mostly in SQL, for example, to get the data from the databases. maybe also some R and or Python, but the main skill here is to know how to visualize and communicate so that you can extract the insights from the data and share it with your business partners. That's why also the domain expertise is important. So you can, for example, I worked as a marketing analyst, so I have the domain marketing, and then using some visualization tool like Tableau, and doing interpretation on the data, but based on this domain expertise is what helps a lot. I don't know, Tereza, from your perspective, if you have something to share in regard to the data analyst skill set. I think we also read there that some people transition first, or they get the first job as a data analyst and then they move on to the data science. And I think this is, or it kind of makes sense in that way, because if you are still growing your programming skills, then you start having some experience with the data together and learning more about the domain of the company you're working for, while you understand better how to develop your programming skills, studying by the side maybe, to evolve to the data scientist role.
Yeah, so I think I used to hire, well, data scientists when I was interviewing, and I found basically that data scientists that have worked before as business analysts, data analysts, have a different level of patience to look through data than data scientists that switch from software development, basically.
How different?
Well, in software, when you're doing software development, when you're coding, you're really used to things to work really quickly and really fast. And then in data science, that's not the case. You need to look at it from a different angle, visualizing differently, try out something else, and also get a good feeling when there's no information then there. And also data science without so the domain expertise is also important in data science, although data science teams sometimes like a little bit, I think in the past years, they tended to silo themselves away from the company. You know, they're like the ivory tower team that they're so cool, they produce stuff, but they don't actually care about the product that much. And that's actually not very beneficial. And it's not something that is sustainable. So if I think as a data analyst, you can learn quite a lot of skills that are then, if you continue to develop your other skills, like the ones that are relevant for data scientists, can definitely be a solid path. And it's easier to get in, I think, at the moment in data analyst roles.
Okay.
Than data science, maybe.
Yeah, so,
and lots of data scientist roles end up being data analysts.
Yes, this is what I meant from the beginning. A lot of the times, this is not what you're going to find out in companies or in job descriptions, but this is the overall idea of the different roles. So if I move forward to the data scientist, you can see there is, again, domain expertise, but less communication and visualization, although it's still important, but then more on the programming and tools side. Let's say you want to be able to use Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebooks. You want to be able to use Git because you collaborate with other people in your team in writing the code. And you have to understand how to use the tools and the theoretical part of the model. So regression, classification, and probably you use scikit-learn for that. If you're on the deep learning area, then you want to use Keras, for example. So this would be the main focus for the data scientist. But if we move forward to the data engineer, then like you were describing, it's different because you don't care so much about the algorithms or the statistics in there. It's really about building the pipelines and the data structures. And when it's about developing the data pipelines, you want to have some knowledge there in some specific database technology or big data technology, Hadoop. And it's also important to understand how to use different programming languages, say not only Python and R, but maybe also Java and Scala.
I would also add it should be important for data engineers to be also a little bit good at communication.
I think for all of them, it's important to be good at communication.
And also
Yes.
data engineers need to do dashboards too. So whether they want it or not, then
for
it's
the
in Grafana.
application.
So
yeah, that's true.
Can I take the opportunity to highlight, there was just a question coming in from Yasin on the kind of soft skills that are important. Maybe we can look at this for a minute before you continue, and you perhaps also voice your take on this. So as you saw at the beginning, I've done some data career coaching, and in particular, I also work with, I've worked and continue working with people that enter into the field in the past months, in particular also with people from Max Planck Institutes, for example. And if you're coming out of academia, I like to look at this issue as the so-called transferable skills. And if you are already in industry, I prefer looking at this as, so to speak, your business skills, if you so like. And let me explain what I mean by this and why I actually don't like the term soft skills and want to get you to think about it differently. So with the soft skills, we typically mean things like communication, project work, team, kind of how you fit in. And yes, that's super interesting to a company, but it may actually not be your most valuable skills. So the first thing that I think you need to see is, for example, your analytic skills are also important. Or the question of whether you have experience with money in some form. So if you have been in academia, did you write proposals that got money? Do you have experience with persuading people to give you money? Or do you have some experience in sales or in business development or some such? It makes particular sense because at the moment, what people need is for these company data teams to create more value. So if you have other experiences in creating value and persuading people to give money, great. The other thing is the data team needs to integrate better or more with people generally who work in tech, and then your analytical skills, plus of course communication can help. And there are a number of other ways of looking at this that is interesting. And I think what you need to do is you should highlight those skills on your CV, and you should give specific examples. So something that I find that doesn't work on CVs and I think will get you in trouble is if people make claims, I'm a great team player, I'm really excellent, I get up early every morning, and it's too general, it's too unspecific. It doesn't really tell the other side what you've done several times before and where they can trust your skills in terms of communication, analysis, or business or so. So that's one way of looking at it. And when you come out of academia, and I've seen several people here who've asked questions that indicate this direction, then I really encourage you can take your search engine, type in transferable skills, and you'll get relevant results. I really encourage you to think about this, because if you have a transferable skills section, which you've thought, which 3 to 4 skills to highlight and what the examples are, you clearly tell the other side, I know I'm leaving academia, I'm going to a company, I've thought about what my transferable skills are, I'm highlighting 4 for you, I'm giving you specific examples to show that I've really practiced this. And by the way, giving 10 presentations per year to international audiences in English and Romanian, with audience up to 150 people, is a transferable skill. You can get up, you can do a presentation, you can communicate in 2 languages, you know how to take the stage, okay? This is all valuable, it's a transferable skill, and you should make clear that you have it. So that's why, if you're coming out of academia, think about your transferable skills. And if you're in industry already, think more broadly about your business skills, not just whether you're a good team player. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I would also say that from academia, the biggest stigma that people have when you evaluate CVs is that you think people are not team players. So if you find a way to kind of say you are a team player without saying I'm a good team player in your CV, so you don't say I'm a good team player, but basically show you are a good team player, say like, on this project, I work with 3 other people, we had a very good way of working together. I don't know, or publications. If you wrote publications, just put 1 or 2 publications where you have co-authors, just to show that you have co-authored, right? And And in general, I think being able to, as in the category of soft skills that should not be called soft skills, I also agree that they shouldn't be called, they are not soft skills, they're not inferior to tech skills. I would say being able to receive feedback and like constructive feedback, and to basically to say, look, I don't know everything and I want to grow, and then like just I won't, you know, that's the way you grow, right? If somebody tells you, look, this is your blind spot, surprise, your blind spot is large. And yeah, so it's like basically the part that you don't know about yourself is usually very, very uncomfortable to hear about it. But if you are able to say thank you and then work on it rather than defend yourself. So it takes practice to learn this, but I think that makes it quite okay to work in a team afterwards. After that, everything can be improved if you agree that you want to improve. So yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Teresa. I was also kind of looking back over the questions, and I wanted to see if I can get you to also comment on the question of the learning journey. Yeah, so you're a coach at the moment as well, and there's a lot of people moving into the field, probably also looking at online learning, maybe looking at in-person learning. How do you know? Do you have any ideas on how to organize this?
Or I think it depends on the personality. Like if you are able to learn on your own, that is amazing. I'm not. Like I need a higher purpose than just to teach myself something. So I'm learning best if I'm doing something with someone else, or like I have a mission. So find a mission. And in my opinion, the problem is that the biggest demotivating factor that I find if I would be able now to say, look, I'm going to spend, I saw here somebody said 2 months, 1 year, whatever, on learning something, and then this becomes one line in my CV, that is not very, motivating. And even if you don't even know yet if that's an important line in the CV. So what I would recommend is, there are so many meetups, and all of the meetups are saying, we want speakers, we want people doing workshops, we want speakers, we want people doing workshops, reach out to us. So find a friend, don't do it alone, it's better to do it with friends, and propose yourself that, look, you're learning this topic, why not just teach it? Because then you learn it even better, and do it at a meetup. Then you have, not only it's a line in your CV, but it's a line on the internet. Internet is forever. So you basically kill 2 ducks if you're not vegetarian. If you're vegetarian, you get 2, I don't know, it's better. And maybe you discover that you have hidden mentoring skills. And that is also one of those skills that are good for industry. So yeah, find a way to set to have some milestones for yourself, some projects you're working on, or some milestones that you want to give a talk, or everything is online now. So
can I add something to the project before you perhaps move on? So Teresa, your intervention, so to speak, in the learning and the making meaningful reminds me of something that I saw and recently heard a professor at Stanford in the computer science department actually confirm. So there are these questions about how to organize your learning. And then those of you that have asked questions, unlike Teresa, you're not actually a computer scientist by training, it seems. Many of you aren't. And then there's this question about the stigma with the academics. So here's something that I observed. I observed that when people have prior domain expertise, so they come from somewhere, It can be an engineering degree, an industry experience in that, or it can be economics, or it can be astrophysics, or maybe they're from the biomedical field, and it can be a master's or it can be a PhD, doesn't actually really matter, plus industry experience or not. They have certain domain experience already. And actually, when you think about that, there's things you know, there's things you experience, and there's probably things where you're wondering whether there's a use case already. So whether there's a use case for analytics or perhaps a use case for machine learning. And if you are at that point where you can go and think about use cases and identify them, then I think you have a relatively clear track or path what to do and how to make the most of it, because you have an idea of the direction where you want to go and where you're searching for applications that make sense. And it means that you bring in, so to speak, the additional data skills that you're acquiring to make this work. And I have two stories for you to kind of confirm what the value that I see in this. The one is indeed this computer science professor from Stanford who said, you know what, I recently, I've always known that in my course on artificial intelligence, a lot of the participants aren't actually CS students. They come from the other departments at Stanford, because it's the type of course that you can actually take no matter where your major is, so to speak. And then he said, well, over time, I've actually observed that the projects from the people coming out of other domains that aren't actually CS students are much more interesting, precisely because they can connect their prior domain expertise with AI or with data or machine learning or whatever it is that they want to do there. And this actually, for him, was an eye-opener. He is himself a computer science PhD and so on, that he said, I think the future of AI is bringing these things together, bringing together the data and the machine learning with the domain. So I have this observation for you. And the other observation I have is from a large European corporate that's also present in Hamburg, namely Airbus. So we interviewed one of the people that really set up or helped to get going inside Airbus, the upskilling to data. And they of course started with the data science team, and then they had a central team, and they thought they somehow needed to grow the central team, until they discovered that it was relatively hard for the data scientists and the computer science graduates to kind of learn all the business stuff about Airbus and all the engineering stuff about Airbus that's going on all the time. And they kind of flipped it. So instead of going for a centralized approach, they went for a decentralized approach. And Airbus is now committed to upskilling 2 to 3% of its engineers and business people, to data analysts, data scientists, and machine learning engineers. And why? Because it turns out it is much easier to take an aerospace engineer and give them the training in data so that they can find meaningful use cases and actually lead and drive those use cases. And then when they need, bring in the real specialist machine learning engineer that is, grade A on that, then trying to take a machine learning engineer and turn them also into an aerospace engineer. And I'm guessing, Teresa, that you perhaps see some of that in your bootcamp now as well, that actually if people have a strong domain interest and they bring those two things together, the data and the domain, that's really exciting.
Yes. I basically would never be able to get a job in chemistry. I would the amount of learning that I would have to do is just like, even I also was looking at there's so many companies with environment stuff, and they are also having quite a high bar on that kind of science, which is again, so I think it's easier to specialize in this, like basically to generalize than to specialize.
Yes. I think that was it for the slides about the different skills. So I saw there's a question there. I will share the slides afterwards via email if you have registered via Eventbrite. If you registered in other places, we'll share on the event pages there, the link for the slides. The last part of the webinar is about some orientation, and this mostly talking about many of the things that we addressed, I guess, also already in the questions. But Chris, would you like to go over the slides?
Yes, I can do that. And while I do, Teresa, there was a question about the bootcamp where you're the data science head coach. Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you for that. And then while I do that, perhaps Dania, so there was so as you know, the AI Guild is, so to speak, by practitioners for practitioners. And one of the things that we're building up at the moment is that we're building up a bit of service for practitioners at certain kinds of touch points that you can find as datacareer.eu now. And it is a way for us to kind of help you quickly. So we don't provide training or courses or long-term kind of stuff, but there's certain things that we can do in a relatively professional way to help you with orientation. And some of you had questions around CV and presenting yourself and so on and so on. So if you're interested, you can go and check out datacareer.eu, which is new, and it will show you some of that stuff. I don't see the slides at the moment, Dania.
What about now?
Now I still don't. Now I do again. Super. Okay, then let's go. Okay, so there were a number of questions that you had that revolved around transitioning into the career and how to go about it or how to think about it. And there are many different ways. So you can start from where you are and your own domain expertise. And then we've all been in the Corona pandemic together. And I have over the past year also repeatedly got the questions what to do about it. And there's another way of thinking about it, at least at the moment. So one way of thinking about getting a data job or getting also a good second role is simply to say, okay, so it's been Corona pandemic. We know companies have suffered. We know in German and European economies, there's often a hiring freeze for many established companies. And then there are the winners, so to speak, right? There are the companies that are not affected or the companies whose growth has accelerated, including the companies whose tools we're using tonight. And that is also interesting. So, you know, another way of looking at this and a piece of straightforward advice is sit down, look at what's going on, and for yourself, compile your own list of the 30 companies that are Corona winners and you're interested in. Yeah, because if they've been successful over the past 12 months, they are hiring. And that means there's simply a better odds. Yeah? One way of looking at it. And then you're looking at a slide that is yet a third way of looking at it. A more systematic way that we are looking at the courtesy of Deloitte, who's come up with this map, called Everyone's Winning, but some industries are winning bigger. And this is AI investment and return on investment, relative landscape of industries. And you can see there's a top corner where there's high AI investment and also high returns. So technology, media, entertainment, telecommunications, perhaps also professional services. And again, it just simply means that you're dealing with companies that when they've made an investment have seen relatively good returns or even excellent returns. That encourages them to grow the sector and to hire more. It also means that you're more likely to meet a company that has a really good data infrastructure and knows what it's doing because it's deriving value from it, okay? So this is also a way of thinking about it. And then if you look below, you can see that the investment in the life sciences and healthcare has also been high, but so far the returns have been low. Now, maybe changing. One of the things that I have seen in the past 12 months is that because of the COVID pandemic and a few other things, the investment into the life sciences suddenly grew also in terms of data, because the pandemic has very much to do with data management and everybody gets it and things are going there. So it depends. So if you're in the life sciences, that's the story. And it also kind of, for example, indicates to me that if you go that way, you should be aware of this table here and the high investment, low return, because it will structure your workplace. It will structure your environment. And if you have an eye for it, perhaps you can help companies to work on that return issue. And I can, again, share a story. Senior data scientist working for one of the large pharmaceutical companies, you know, he was enjoying his work and it was going well and so on and so on. But at some point he was kind of looking around and thinking, I'm not that well. So Tereza, you also mentioned this, right? I'm not that well to the connected. I don't think I have enough impact. What can I do about this? Then he spent 3 months looking at his corporation and trying to figure out where it was that he could and so on, given his background and interest and so on. And then he hit upon the fact that what he wanted to do is he wanted to drive data for the development pipeline. So as you perhaps know, developing a new medication or a new vaccine or whatever typically takes very long, which is why now we have these emergency permissions and so on. So it's a long thing, and it's expensive and it's risky and so on. So he decided to focus effort on making the pipeline safer and shorter with the help of data. And the moment he'd realized that, and the moment he moved his attention to this problem, that was a big one for the company, he started having impact, and his career took a different turn, as you can probably well imagine. So this story is to encourage you to kind of have a look around and understand where you are, where your company is, and positions yourself accordingly. So then, industry challenges. Again, this time it's courtesy of PricewaterhouseCoopers and a report that they've been looking at that we're using here to bring something else across. And then I'm going to invite Tereza and Daniel to comment on this and the next one as well. So key industry challenge actually means here, I want to encourage you to look at Europe as one very often thinks of Europe. So some well-established companies that are actually pretty old. Because if you, this is the story of the European economy at the moment, right? Some well-established companies that are pretty old. So this is the other way. The other observation is there's no Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or whatever equivalent in Europe. And you know about this. So, and then sometimes they also, of course, have new units that do innovative things, that do digital things. Actually, Tereza worked for one of them. And there are issues around this. So want to say, if you go to one of those, some of the challenges that you're going to be facing are fairly basic, and please be aware of those. So data volume, accessibility, and quality. Yeah. So one favorite quip I have is, there are unfortunately typical European companies that are still looking for the key to the cabinet in which the printed out Excel sheets are hiding. So data accessibility. Do they have data? What quality is it? Can you actually do something with it so it becomes a pipeline so that you could model anything? Then the next thing is, because they've been around for a while and data is a new game, you have the issue of trust. So trust of customers, stakeholders, and employees. So one way in which I think we've seen that AI adoption actually stalls is that you may have a fairly proficient team, but the senior management actually doesn't really get it. It doesn't really understand it. It's also not often that easy to explain it. And it stalls there. So you actually have to, and it's more than communication. Yeah, it's actually getting the other side on board so that they give a green light and then also adopt what you're doing. So that's important. And then the third point here is the competence of employees, management, and the company itself. So that's also an issue. And we're using a PwC report here to say we didn't make this up, okay? There have been people going around the industry trying to figure out what are the key challenges that traditional European industry has, and they came up with this, okay? It's not machine learning modeling competence, it's those three. Next one, and then I'll...
You wanted us to comment?
Yes, please, you can comment. Go on.
I agree. Sorry. Yeah. So my comment is that I agree. Indeed. So when I was saying about reading in between the lines about the company's proficiency in the data department, I call this the age. So the data, like the data age of the company. So to kind of say, like, when did this company start dealing with data? If they are mature about it or not. So basically I say, like, yeah, I mean, most companies want to have data literacy and they want to do data science, but they still are, they're in the past where, yeah, but doing it following your gut feeling is still the thing to do. And data science is supposed to be this magic thing that brings profit, right? So randomly, but that is the expectation, and that's kind of usually how senior management sees things in Germany, unfortunately. And it's not just Germany. but Europe and the whole world, I think I saw this other study on data literacy, and there was like 25% of senior management is data literate. That means 75% of decision makers do not read plots, right?
Yeah.
And you have to deal with that.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why I say, like, in data science, at least in the data department, so one good skill is convincing people. Like, if you cannot sell your idea, if you have the best analysis ever, but you cannot communicate it, you're not going to get it through, right? And
it's about building trust.
Yeah, and that's something that takes a lot of time, right? It's not going to happen once. And I think one of the problems that a lot of data science teams are having is that they always like to present successful stories. And the successful stories are usually few compared to the unsuccessful ones, right? So
yeah, this is, I think, anywhere, not only in professional, or not only for the data professionals, but in general. Yeah. But I also think in this idea of getting the trust of people that are working with, especially, I think it's also about understanding who are the people that are interested in learning if they don't already have the knowledge or the competence in data, because those would be the people that are on your side and they want to make it work also for them. Because there's also people that are resistant to change and they're afraid that AI will steal their jobs and all of this. So I think this is also an important skill.
But those are usually not the ones working above you. Those are usually the ones that are minimum wage.
Be on all sides, I would say.
Yeah, or an old person
from my
working,
experience, at least.
Not like old in the company. Somebody who worked there for 20 years, they will definitely be scared for their job.
Yeah, but not only. It's not only about age.
No, not age, but the old in the company, basically. So the old companies have this thing of working there forever, right? They have this employees that's their only job they've had.
Yes, they build their career in this one company, yes.
And those people are really hard to convince, I think, because for them there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sometimes.
Okay, so I've spoken a bit, or we have spoken a bit about challenges with traditional industry. I hasten to add, of course, that most of the large companies have read the signs on the wall. So I reported earlier about this Airbus program of upskilling 2 to 3%. So that's like 3,000 people of 100,000. We've also seen in Germany, for example, Volkswagen trying to get its act together and creating a single unit that you can find as car.sw for software.org, which is actually for thousands of people working on software and data issues for the whole corporation. So companies know this. So please do go and work for them if you like, but please be aware. And conversely, if you're looking at startups, there are also some challenges I think you need to be aware of. And the first one is actually precisely the same one. So data volume, accessibility, and quality. And I think we already today here had a comment, and I keep getting this. So there's always this exciting startup that has discovered data. And even though they're entirely digital and so on, they only just somehow discovered data. And then they hire a data scientist and tell the data scientist to kind of get on with it. And somehow I expect the data scientist to revolutionize the company between now and the summer. And it doesn't work. Yeah? And there's this, if you want to go there, it needs preparation. And just hiring one data scientist won't do the magic for you. So you need to query also, so to speak, the team size and the expertise level. Yeah. Also legendary in Berlin that hire as lead data scientist somebody fresh out of university or bootcamp or whatever. Yeah. Also not a good sign. So if you go and work in a startup, and it's a bigger startup that has a reputation and a large team, and by the way, these exist in Berlin and also in other places, it'll be fairly easy. You will slot in, and as Tereza said, you can do your check on LinkedIn, and if they have 10 data scientists, 20, and 30 data analysts and dedicated data engineers, you know, you're looking at the real thing for all you know. But if not, go and check. And then also, if you're interested and you want to go and work there, please really check and query and ask, and don't be shy to ask. So things you can determine upfront is, so to speak, expertise level and team size by finding out who works there. But also, if you go in, please do ask them about company funding and the so-called runway. So the runway is the technical term for, all things being equal, how long will their money last before they go broke? And I think you need to do this because in your first or your second role, you want to be relatively sure that over the next 18, 24, or if you plan even longer period, 18 or 24 months, the thing is moving, it's going forward, and the company is not facing an existential threat or crisis every 6 months, where it's very hard to focus and actually have a plan to get things done. So there are also some startup challenges that I think you should be aware of and need to look at. Perhaps over to you again, Tereza. I mean, Hamburg also has a lot of startups. So and you worked for you worked for one startup and one quasi startup, right?
Yeah, I worked for one that we went to a startup accelerator, but it was unofficial because I was not supposed to be working. But yeah, I think, yeah, startups. It can be cool. I mean, if they really have a nice product, but sometimes when you see they have a team of 2 and then there's already a head of data science, and the head of data science being the only person, you know, or something like that. Or you go to, I've heard of interviews where there are no data scientists in the interview, and then the interview process is random. I mean, obviously they will either like you or not, right? I mean, you impress them, but they're not, you can really go through it as like buzzwording your way around the job interview, definitely. Who can judge, right? But, and then I find the problem is that, yeah, you can get in, but you will not like that job because you will have to figure out everything on your own, and there's going to be a team of, you will not get any help in the company from other people, as nobody will be doing data science, and it's going to be quite a hard it can be quite a hard lesson to be like on your first job. So I think when you're a bit more experienced and you can go into something like this and make something out of it, that's cool. But the risk is that it makes something out of you that is like wasting your time, right? In the end, you're not going to help. It won't help you with achieving your goals. So I think, yeah. Sometimes you can also afford just having a 6 months job just for the experience, if you can afford it, right? So not everybody can afford this insecurity and the instability of that. So you have to see.
Well, perhaps we could also hand it over to Dania. I mean, you've been in the belly of the beast, Berlin startup career for many years.
Yes. So I don't know, what can I say? I mean, I wouldn't advise anyone that is looking for their first job experience to join a startup that has like 1 or 2 people in the data department, or even no data people overall, just because for your first job, you really need to learn how it works. And if you have no one to learn from, it is really hard because it depends on you and your Google skills, I guess. I worked for startups, and 2 times I was the first data scientist, but I did have data engineers and data analysts and BI analysts and other data people around me. But still, it is a challenge because you need to figure out what is the use case and how you can deliver on that as soon as possible, because you really need to prove that there is value in doing that and growing the team. That's it. Yeah. So it's a lot of learning because I did not have an official title of agile coach or product manager, but I did all of that because I had to wear many hats in order to get things moving. So it is good when you have some idea of what you want to do, and when you really want to learn and do more than just focus on, I don't know, algorithms and programming. But yeah, you have to be aware of it.
Yeah, I think I think one rule of thumb should be, look, have you experienced it, seen it done, see how it works? Then you can trust yourself maybe to do it somewhere else on your own, right?
Yeah,
it can
that's
be
right.
quite fun, right? But if you're at the part where you don't know where you're going with it, you don't know where it's going, and then you're responsible for that discovery journey.
Yeah, it can be too much.
Where you don't know where the goal of this discovery journey is, then that can be quite a hard. I mean, some people like this kind of stress, but not everybody likes this kind of stress. I'm not sure if it's a constructive kind of stress.
Yes, and I think it also, I think to work in a startup, you really have to have this kind of profile that you're not looking for something that is stable and you can plan 5 years ahead, because this is not what's happening in a startup. So it depends also on your personal perspective of looking at things. Yeah, but for sure, the data volume, accessibility, and quality is something that as challenge, doesn't matter the size of the company.
Infos about companies was a question. Glassdoor, LinkedIn. How would you go about it?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Kununu, see what kind of people work there. I mean, LinkedIn has the profiles of other people. You can see who works there.
A lot of companies, they have tech blogs also, so you can look for some publications and see if you can find something. In usual days, we have meetups. Now we have online meetups, so maybe you can also find more information about companies if you join their meetups.
Yeah, and if you want to hear all about the stuff that nobody talks about, you need to join networks.
Yeah, join the AI Guild.
Yeah,
and
so,
ask people. I mean, we
yeah,
have people that work in companies that can give you some information if you're looking for a specific company, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's the other part of information that I mean, like if you're a minority or an underrepresented group, you want to have input from minorities and unrepresented group. What is it to be a minority or an unrepresented group in this company? And that's a different part that is parallel to the data part, but it's part of the culture of the company. And yeah.
So to some extent, actually, so to Alexander's question, to make the list of 30 interesting companies, well, you could use the stock exchange and valuations on it. That will be a very obvious benchmark. To go to some of the stuff that Tereza and Dania mentioned, to try and navigate your way around and having connections. So actually, in the field that we are, I think this works relatively well, and difficult to speak about it because we represent the AI Guild, but if you go and check out the AI Guild, you will actually find that we are a very diverse and very international community. And if you look at the field itself, then this is simply the case. So and then in most of the European metropolises, this is even more so the case, so that very many people have a background with mobility and or migration. Then something that you can also see here tonight represented, so is true for the AI Guild, that we really also care about gender diversity, that we really work on this and make an effort in that direction. And then in the background, we try to help with these data career questions and make it work, including this question that came up with the languages. So, speaking the local language will always help you, but it's also true that in our field at this point in time, not speaking the local language does not mean that you can't get a job. So you will get a job. Not all companies will take you, but I can again relate a story. So years ago, while I was also in a boot camp, there was a very large German automotive corporate that is very present in Berlin with a number of hubs. And it turned out that they hadn't yet hired anybody who didn't submit a German CV and took the interview in German. And then we decided we were going to do something about this. I, of course, had a contact on the inside, and we got them to hire 2 people that weren't fluent in German. So it's changing and it can be done. And I think we are all here to also help that change happen, really. And it works. And I also always like to point out that to some extent, talent is so scarce. So I also know a bit about the consulting field for private reasons. And I know that German consultancy firms hire consultants these days from all parts of the world and put them in front of German corporates, whether they speak German or not. So it is not just in the data field, it's changing everywhere. And it's becoming more international, more diverse. And we're here to help that, really.
Yeah, my observation in relation to that is usually for more technical roles, it is easier to not be fluent in German and find a job. But when it is really about BI or analytics and it's closely working closely with stakeholders in departments like marketing and sales, it really makes a difference to be fluent in the language, just because it helps them on their daily tasks. So it's also something to be looking for.
Yeah, it's the same with climbing the career ladder. It's the higher you get, the more a problem it becomes if you don't speak the language. Even when companies say that English is their main language.
Yes, you need the local language.
Yeah.
Yes, I typically refer to this as if you want to avoid the glass ceiling, you need to make an effort to learn the local language to the level that you can have a fluent dinner conversation.
Yeah.
Those networking events.
Yeah, it's the informal part, not only the formal official language of the company.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, by talking about what we've talking about, I think we've spoken to this slide as well. So onto the final one. New from the AI Guild, but now set up in a professional kind of way. We can do certain things to help people. For those of you that were here tonight, I think the most interesting thing is the CV check. So something that we can do for you is we can give you, we'll give you instruction on how to prepare your CV so that an experienced member of the AI Guild can read it, interview you about your profile, and give you some tips and tricks on improving the CV so that it becomes more compatible with what you're looking for, so to speak, and hopefully gets you more interviews. That's what I think we can do. And also kind of validate your CV and then make it part of the network that we have, if that's interesting for you for a first, second, or third role.
Yes, and thank you all for joining. Yes, I just want to say that I will share the slides, I will share the links, and you can also find us in LinkedIn. There will be the links on the presentation. If you have any other questions, just reach out.
Indeed. Also, thank you from my side, and thank you especially to Tereza
joining us tonight. For being with us tonight.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you will find all three of us, also Tereza Iofciu on LinkedIn if you like, and you can connect there. So one of the things I've learned is if you want to connect, mention that you were here tonight, then it's easier for Tereza, Dania, or myself to look at this and understand. And then otherwise, please use the slides on Speaker Deck.